Sir Ed Davey in Chichester was asked what he thought about Michael Gove's resignation, or Michael Gove stepping down, and he said he thought that meant the Conservatives are giving up and that they are in a mess. Well, I don't think this is anything particularly new. He says the Conservatives have governed the country so badly. We are much more ambitious than some of the other parties, and that politics in the country is broken and needs to be changed. Well, he was part of that Conservative process. He was in league with the Conservatives for the first part of the 14 years in the Conservative Liberal coalition, Lib Dem coalition, and he has been fingered with suspicion over the fingers are pointed to him for explanations about his inaction regarding the Post Office Horizon Fujitsu scandal. So I think it's not appropriate for him to be finger pointing to the Conservatives and saying they're in a mess when he and his Lib Dem party are not in a great state either. The only party that is in a position to seize the moment, carpe diem, is the Labour Party. All the other parties, the SNP is riddled with scandal. The Lib Dem party ought to be riddled with scandal, but I think people are so exhausted they can't really be bothered. But Ed Davey himself is a beacon for this story, and the Greens, the Greens have been eclipsed, really. The Greens really are only represented in Parliament by Caroline Lucas, and so without her, there isn't really a banner waver for the Greens. And of course, the Conservatives have been in power for a very long time. They're riddled with sleaze and clearly suffering from corruption and exhaustion, I suppose. But the other issue is a sense of not listening to people and thinking that they are superior. This is encapsulated in the person of Andrea Leadsom, who even tried to carry her handbag around, I remember, at her surgery as if she were Mrs. Thatcher. The problem with emulating Thatcher is people have not looked at the books about Thatcher, the books by Thatcher, and they haven't done their homework. All they've done is listen to either the BBC about how awful Thatcher was, people who didn't live through that period, or they've listened to some sort of jumped-up, second-rate television coverage about how much everybody hated Thatcher. That's not, in fact, true. Thatcher and Thatcherism was a political belief that literally divided the country. People were not indifferent to Thatcherism. People either loved it or they hated it. And what I know from looking at the books and from looking closely at the evidence is that the ideas put forward in the manifestos were very different to the ideas that were actually wheeled out in the parliaments that followed. Thatcher clearly changed her mind and clearly listened to what other people had to say. She may not have been listening, from your point of view, to the right people. She may not have made the right decisions, but she certainly changed her mind. The idea of inflexibility is simply not true. And that is the image that both Andrea Leadsom and the inordinately marionetting Liz Truss would have us believe, that she was inflexible, the Iron Lady who never changed her mind, her principles. I can't think of a tricolon there except for underwear, and I don't think that would be appropriate. But they're wrong. They're wrong. And Thatcher was extraordinarily adroit at managing the caricature that had been invented for her by the Russians, and then seizing on the vicious and brilliant cartoons by Scarfe and others that portrayed her as this extraordinary monster. So she didn't have to look tough, because the world thought she was tough. And those who tried to emulate her, particularly the Suella Bravermans, the Kemi Badenochs. I was talking to somebody today who works in her department, and there was a sort of groan. And, nobody can actually say what they politically think, but I don't believe Kemi Badenoch is very popular in her department. And Kemi Badenoch, Suella Braverman, Liz Truss, Andrea Leadsom, all have this image of Thatcher that they try to emulate. And they are wrong. They're wrong. They're trying to look tough. That job was done for her. And these second-rate politicians have messed it up because they haven't done their homework. And you only have to listen to Suella Braverman in the committee rooms, flicking through her files to try and find a relevant slogan, to know that that is somebody who simply does not know how to master her brief. Thatcher knew how to master her brief. She knew how to do the work, and she knew how to listen and change her mind.